welcome everyone to Virtually Incorrect. I am Gunter, your host tonight. For those new, Virtually Incorrect is a weekly panel discussion show about virtual reality in virtual reality. Topics that are interesting to the VR community will be semi-seriously discussed with a panel each week, with nothing off limits and nothing censored. Before we introduce our guest, I want to thank the fantastic Riftmax crew for producing and editing the show, as well as the amazing guest here, the folks in the audience in the Riftmax studio, and everyone watching via Hitbox or YouTube. And I also want to give a special shout out to Holotape, who's been helping me prep the show. It's been a great help, and I really appreciate it. So, that being said, we've got an amazing panel of VR developers, personalities, and enthusiasts here with us, so let's go ahead and introduce them. On my right, we've got Shove, developer of Lunar Flight. How you doing, Shove?
I'm very good, thanks, Gunter. How are you?
Doing very well tonight. Thanks for coming out. And also on my right is Holotape, VR enthusiast and musician. Hey, Holotape.
Hey, Gunter. How's it going?
Glad you could make it. On my left, we have Proton, developer of Time Rifters. Welcome.
Hey, good to be here.
And finally, we have Krysania, MFA Interdisciplinary Art and Media student at Columbia College of Chicago, currently studying and creating art about life in the metaverse. Welcome.
Hey, how's it going?
So now it's time to dive into some VR discussion, and our first story is basically that, predictions for E3. And this was posted by Throwdown. And in the post, Throwdown asked the community what they predict for next week's Electronic Entertainment Expo. So E3 is next week. We learned on Wednesday that Oculus will be showing a new game. Do you expect any further announcements from Oculus? Shub, what do you think?
You know what? I'm not actually thinking they're going to announce anything significantly new, other than Lucky's Tale is the title of the new game that they've backed. So you know, I'm not sure we're going to actually hear about anything about you know, CV1 or anything like that. Potentially, with rumors about Samsung, we don't know. They might have an announcement about that.
Interesting. Holotape, what do you think?
Yeah, I would agree with Shove. There's not going to be a 4K CV1 prototype or whatever the folks on Reddit might like to believe. I really think they're just going to be sort of, you know, spreading the word and preaching VR, and that's about it. You know, this
having the
our
presence there.
Oculus community is not really that. Yeah, it's this isn't a really big community or anything. You know, there's a lot of people who know a little bit about this or that it's coming or whatever, but haven't necessarily tried it or seen it or anything like that. I think they're just going to be, you know, talking the talk and showing it off.
Sure. There's some conservative perspectives. Proton, do you share that, or do you think, you know, there might be a bigger announcement?
Yeah, I gotta agree with them, unfortunately. It's too hard to predict what Oculus is going to be doing. I mean, none of us really predicted the Facebook thing, but in this case, I think it's pretty safe to say there's not going to be anything big announced. There's no reason for them to do it. What would be the benefit for them to announce anything big? They don't want to give their competitors any kind of insight into what their thinking is, so just hold off any announcements till they actually have something to release to us.
Krysania, I know that you're new to this VR community, new to the subreddit. You come from a different background with VR, and your studies are in, you know, art and metaverse. I'm not sure. Have you, you know, heard about how much do you know about Oculus and, you know, also E3?
In regards to all this Oculus stuff, I'm very interested in how that's going to play into the lives of people, because I know that this stuff is going to eventually seep into our real lives, whether we like it or not. So I'm very interested in that right now. And as far as the E3 thing goes, like, you know, I really don't think that Oculus is going to try and share too much, but I worry about that.
Sure. Let's riff on that for a little bit. We have also Sony Morpheus as well as a competitor, Game Face's competitor. Let's talk about these HMD units. Proton, what do you think?
Yeah, sure. So with the different HMDs, I think it's important to actually try them out before I decide if I want to put the effort into supporting it. Sometimes in your mind something's really awesome, and then when you try it, it doesn't work out as great. I did get the track IR, for example, and it seemed great in theory, but when I tried it, it didn't work, and it especially didn't work with an HMD as you turned away from the screen. So I really do want to try things before committing to developing for it.
I would prefer to do that. Unfortunately, I've been a fool buying too much of these different hardware packages. Holotape, you got any thoughts on that?
You know, I sort of live two lives. I've been a PC gamer my whole life, but I really love my PlayStation from time to time. There's just some exclusives on there that I really like. I'll definitely be buying a Rift CV1 first. Well, assuming it comes out first. But I know I'll get a Morpheus one day. I love the Gran Turismo series and some of their other franchises. I just love to, I'd love to play them. I love VR. If I can find the cash, I'll buy them all. Well, not all of them, but, the big ones.
Buy all the VR things. Shove, so what do you think as well? Do you think that, are you worried about Samsung? Are you worried about, Morpheus and that creeping up on Oculus's, kind of what they've started here? Or is this all good competition and whatnot?
I think it's all good. Ultimately, I think there's just too much momentum behind Oculus for them to be too threatened by a lot of these other things. I think everyone's committed and believes in what they're doing, that they're just going to keep following those guys. But everybody else, it's still great that everybody else is trying these different things, and I think a lot of them will get some foothold and be pretty good. But Sony Morpheus, I tried at SVVRCon, and I was pleasantly surprised by the quality of it, and I started to think that I should be supporting that or seeking contact with Sony to follow up on porting my projects over to them. And regarding a lot of the mobile stuff, for me, I mean, obviously the performance is not there yet, but eventually it will be, and I think there will be some experiences that are really, really cool for those platforms.
Yeah, I'm really excited about mobile and mobile sort of meetups. I'd like to be able to do things like this on a mobile device and not have to worry about being home with my huge rig. So let's bounce this idea around the table and see, what do you think about these VR communities, and also what is real? Is this real, Shove?
The first time I tried Riftmax yesterday, I was pretty impressed. Like, I didn't expect this, to be honest. And the sense of actually being here and sitting at this table with you guys is quite profound, really. Like Krysania is saying, this is a real experience by all intents to my brain. Sure, it's not part of the physical world, but this is an experience that I'm actually experiencing, and it has all the same types of emotional impacts that I would have having the same kind of experience in the real world.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I get, stage fright sometimes, or I'm nervous to come on the show and present all this to everybody. So this is all very real for me, for sure. Holotape, your thoughts?
Yeah, I definitely, the second I heard the theme music, I started getting nervous. And on Thursday nights we have the karaoke night here in Riftmax, and the first few times you get up there, it's really terrifying. I've sort of gotten over that now. I've got to know a lot of these people here, which is it's really great. There's a really cool community of people. I guess most of us found each other through the Oculus subreddit and other places. A lot of developers, a lot of enthusiasts. I don't know. It's really cool. It's really amazing. I don't know. I'm kind of. It's very hard to describe, but it's
totally am with you.
It's yeah. It is very real, much more than when I was playing WoW or whatever, and hanging out with orcs or whatever. We had they were friends, and I knew them as people in a Ventrilo window, and I knew that they were playing a game as well. It wasn't really as immersive. Maybe it's the third person versus first person thing. But I don't know. In here with the you know the head movements and the hydras and all that, it's really adds something.
Yeah, absolutely. This VR Soul stuff is really awesome. And first time I've done karaoke was, one of the first episodes of karaoke night or whatever. And it's all recorded, and you go back and watch it. And it's also cool that your, songs are recorded. You can go back and share them with your friends and family. So that was really great, and it was nerve-wracking, and I'm sure, sweating. But yeah, it was great. Proton, any thoughts on this topic?
Yeah, if you think about a VR community or any kind of online community, a lot of us have a different name in virtual reality or just in video games than we do in the real world. And I think it would be kind of unusual if I joined up and my name was, Doug Wallenick or something. It seems kind of odd, but with the name of Proton, it's almost a little more fitting. And I do struggle with how do I present myself to people. Do I use the name Doug? Do I use Proton? And in what context do I use those different names? Is it a different person? Or it's not, it's obviously not a different person, but different people know me by different names. And probably more people know me by Proton than by Doug. And that's kind of an unusual thing. I'm not really sure how to handle it, and I sort of watch how other people handle it too. How do they make their Twitter profile? How do they make their YouTube page? And do you have two identities, or do you try to merge them together? Not really sure what the answer is, but it's evolving.
Yeah, I'm in the same boat. I mean, I'm Gunter, and I really like being Gunter, but that's not my real name. It's been cool, and it's something that I've used my normal name with like my normal day job as a web developer and all that community and whatnot. But in VR, I really wanted to take on a little bit more of a different different avatar and a different name. But I basically find myself now checking my Gunter Twitter and Gunter's email kind of more than I'm checking my personal now. So that's pretty interesting. Krysania, did you want to add any more or respond to any of this before we move on to the next topic?
Well, I totally relate as far as like the whole name thing goes because like I'm a performer in Second Life as well. Like I play music, I play the guitar and I sing. And a lot of my other friends also do the same thing, and we always have this thing where it's like, yeah, it's an extra layer of protection when you have your own username, but it does make things hard when you finally get to know someone really well and you finally start wanting to get onto that name-to-name basis, but you're still not sure of whether or not you should trust them yet, especially in a digital universe where you can't see their face, you can't see their expressions. But as all this VR stuff gets closer and closer to being able to match our facial movements and expressions and like the way that our disposition is, like it's gonna change things a lot.
It's going to be huge with VR. It's not just your keyboard with your monitor. You're now we feel like we're here with each other. So there's going to be consequences. It's going to be more emotional. There's going to be heartache probably that's more rich, and then these things are going to keep evolving, of course, and it's going to get more rich as we go on. So that's a very stimulating topic. So what we're going to do now is sort of a guest spotlight, and so I'll go around the table at different points throughout the show, and you're first up. So my questions are, if you don't mind, tell us a little bit just basically about your stuff and how you got involved in VR.
Okay, so I worked in the games industry as a level designer and game designer for about 10 years in Australia. I've worked for some fairly big companies and on some pretty big IPs. Before I started in the games industry, I studied programming, and but then went into design. After about 10 years, the industry in Australia collapsed, and I found myself either having the option of trying to find work overseas, like in Canada, where there's plenty of jobs, or doing my own thing. And I developed Lunar Flight just as a hobby project. I never set out to be an indie developer really initially. It was just something I was playing around with. And it kind of got to a point where it looked like, oh yeah, I could probably sell this. Why not have a go at doing that? So I finished that up and managed to get Steam publishing. This is long before Greenlight. I went through their old process where you submit on a web page and hope like hell that they'll accept your submission. It took 2 months to get an answer from them, and sure enough, I got on there. Lunar Flight has made enough money for me to not have to return to work. It doesn't make a huge amount of money given its niche nature,
Awesome.
but it does make enough for me to continue to develop my own things. With respect to VR, like a lot of people, when I saw the Kickstarter pop up, I was like, yeah, cool. VR seems practical now. The hardware is caught up. I'll back that. I never actually thought I'd be developing stuff for it initially. I just wanted to get one and have a play with it. And when I finally got it, I actually sat in my room for 2 weeks and I never touched it. I was just too busy at the time. I was doing the multiplayer integration for Lunar Flight at the time. So I finally got that done, and the first thing I tried was Proton Pulse, because everybody was talking about that. All right, I'll give that a go. And that was the most impressionable thing that I tried straight away. And I've met Justin several times since, the developer of it, and told him how much of an impression it's had on me and influenced my decision to go. It kind of really sparked my interest in developing stuff again after doing it for so long. I kind of felt a bit jaded with the whole games industry and the development scene, and this was something new where I felt like a kid again. Like there was unexplored territory here, and I could really, you know, flex my mental capabilities to try and do something interesting. So the next demo I tried was Heli Hell. It had you in a little helicopter flying over like a battleship and a little island that was randomly generated. It was one of the early demos, and that also was probably the impetus that told me I had to go and put VR into Lunar Flight, because it was a cockpit experience. I felt like I was flying. I looked down, I had a body, and all those elements there were really, really strong influences on me deciding I had to do VR in Lunar Flight. And as I developed Lunar Flight's integration, that belief in what was happening was something going to be really, really big. Like the experience I was having with my own work was telling me that this is an amazing thing, and it just drove me harder and harder to work harder and harder on it, and to make it the best I could. So it came out and it was fairly well received, and since then I've just decided I'm a VR developer now. That's what I want to focus on, and I've recently formed a new company called Lucid VR. I was approached by some investors who owned some IPs that they wanted to do something with, and they approached me about directing a new business for them, and I thought, great, this is exactly what I wanted to do. So I've since then been developing a title which I've announced and released some videos for, called Zombie VR, and here I am now talking to you guys.
Awesome. All right, so let's move on to the next story. ControlVR Kickstarter launch, and they are almost at 150,000. I think out of 250 they want, and there's 28 days to go. $600 to get both of your hands in VR. Question to the guest: who's willing to drop that kind of dough for this sort of thing? Holotape? You're saying no?
I think it looks really cool, and I've always, I've been a fan of Lawnmower Man and those sorts of things. Data gloves were always what I imagined, maybe in combination with other controllers. But it's a bit too much for me to take a gamble on right now. I'm not developing anything by myself for it, so I'll certainly wait and see.
How about you, Shove?
Yeah, I actually looked into this early. I looked at a company called Animal Zoo, I think they were called, maybe Animal Zoo, and they made a set of gloves. But I got in contact with them, and they said that they cost $16,000 each per glove. And I thought, well, that's kind of they build motion capture systems for the animation industry, so their stuff is, it's all hand built and low production amounts, so that's why the price is so high. But certainly, I haven't had a good look at Control VR, but I've seen some screenshots and saw the Iron Man video, I think it was, and I can certainly see what their intention is to produce a low-cost set of gloves. My concern, obviously, I think $600 is a lot of money for a pair of gloves for for a large market to emerge, and this is true for any of these input systems like PreVR and even STEM to have a big enough market for content creators to actually integrate support for. So my only concern is that they actually survive long enough for that to happen, because it will eventually happen. I just hope a lot of these companies don't fall over, or they go bankrupt before they can realize the potential of that technology, and for the market to grow enough to support content creation.
Yeah, that's a great point. A comment I have in here from Nate8 is, I think $600 for a VR controller is exactly what they need to cost, because if you sell it for 250 with the goal of 250,000, you wouldn't reach it despite everyone in the community pitching in for a set. And he's also nervous about drift in an all IMU setup. You need an optic anchor for things to be one-to-one. That's why DK2 has a camera. I think a lot of people might be disappointed, and Doc Ock has a great video about that. Title on YouTube's Pure IMU-based positional tracking is a no-go. Proton, what do you think about all of this? Would you buy this? And have you been following this technology and heard about it?
Yeah, I'm not too excited about having any kind of new peripherals, really. I mean, just right now, to get this working like it is, I'm just completely wired up to my computer right now. There's wires all over. I feel like Neo when he woke up from the Matrix. It's just kind of crazy. And it could get even worse. So, I don't know. I want less wires. I want a simpler experience, something people can play. Maybe, I don't want to use the word casual because it kind of sounds like casual gaming, like a phone or something, but something that's a little easier to use, something that you don't have to spend a lot of time setting up. Because it is kind of a hassle when I go down onto the couch and I want to try out the Rift. I've got to move the laptop over, I've got to connect a bunch of wires, and if I want to get the Hydras there, I'm just like, I just won't do Hydras, So make it easier, not harder.
Krysania, have you seen any VR gloves? Are you interested in VR gloves? That's basically what ControlVR is offering us. What are your thoughts?
Thing is that I've been really interested in what Imogen Heap is doing right now, because she has this gestural glove system that she's using to create music, and I think she also has a Kickstarter, and I'm really interested in how she's using the gloves to be able to filter that into a program let's say Max or something like that to create interesting sound combinations, to be able to create songs in that kind of way. So it seems like a really smart first move in regards to gloves and gestural movements and technology in that kind of way. So imagine if you're in a VR space and you're just making music with your hands. How cool is that?
It's very cool. I mean, Holotape, what do you think? Is that cool?
Yeah, well, I'm always looking for new ways of making music, new inputs, I guess. The only things I can think of that have come out in the last 10 to 20 years is something like the Korg Chaos Pad, sort of like an XY, like a touchpad on a laptop or something, but you can use it to control various different sorts of things. I don't know, music is very touch-based. You play the piano soft or hard, or you mute the strings on a guitar. I don't know really how I would make music, in the air or on something touch-based. That's just me, though. There's plenty of people. They're making great sounding stuff on an iPad, but I want knobs and sliders and buttons and aftertouch.
Makes sense. I mean, it definitely would be the new way of approaching it. I'm sure you'd be interested in it, but how would it all work?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Very cool stuff. Holotape, why don't you go ahead and talk about some of the things that you're doing here in the VR community?
Yeah. Well, I'm not a programmer, not anymore. I coded a bit of assembly in high school. I was, interested in the demo scene, and I wanted to make cool stuff. I didn't get too far, but I've been studying music for a very long time. anyways, that's sort of my background. You know, I must have seen Lawnmower Man or Brain Scan or something VR at some point. You know, very early '90s, I guess.
Is Brain Scan Edward Furlong? Is that?
Yeah,
Oh
yeah,
no, is it Edward Furlong? Isn't Edward Furlong
yeah,
the kid
it
from
is.
Not
Terminator 2?
Brainstorm or that other one.
Brainstorm's another one. I saw that one much later on though. Yeah,
There's one from the
Scan.
80s.
Yeah, Brainstorm is Christopher Walken. Brain Scan is Edward Furlong, aka John Connor, young John Connor. Anyway, I don't know. I can't really pinpoint exactly when I got interested in VR, but I knew that when I saw it, most likely in a movie, I was super interested. I picked up a William Gibson book because it had a guy with VR glasses on the front. Virtual Light was the book, and I kind of went down the rabbit hole. I tried virtuality headsets, the monstrous ones in arcades where you pay like $15 for 5 minutes of an awful experience, 2 frames a second and like just the worst tracking on the controller. It was just a very awkward experience. But I still thought about it a lot. I'm like, you know what? If I can like get $15 together again just to go one more time to that arcade, maybe I'll actually be able to move 5 feet without, hitting a wall because I've got it figured out. Anyways, that sort of went away, and then Carmack shows up at E3 with the ski goggle prototype, and I was like, oh my god, it's back. And it's kind of keeping my eye on that. The Kickstarter came around, they started shipping. I knew they were going out. I searched on YouTube for Oculus Rift videos. I was just really hungry. I found Cymatic Bruce and Oculus subreddit, and here I am, I guess.
Yeah, here you are.
What I'm
You've
doing
been
right
helping
now,
with the.
kind of
Oh,
making. Yeah, sorry. I don't know. I've just been getting to know some people in this community and seeing where I can help out. I'm not a programmer. I'm not an artist. But it looks like I'll be doing some work with Team Metatron at metatronvr.com. They've got a few projects, one of which is VR chess. They're going to be showing that off at the Origins Game Fair in Columbus, Ohio, I believe. That's next week.
Yeah.
I think the site is originsgamefair.com. You can check that out. I believe there's a Rift room, and they're going to be showing that. There'll be some other Rift demos there, too. But yeah, so I'll be doing most likely some sound design and a bit of music for them. I don't know, it's kind of getting involved where I can and meeting some really cool people.
I'm really proud of what that team has been able to grow into, and I don't do any of the heavy lifting. I take care of the website and talk a lot, but really proud of what they've got going on. So very cool stuff. And the next story that we have is something we kind of talked about for a moment, but I want to get into it a little bit further, is the Chitin Lightning launching Sensa Peso, a VR cinematic epic. And there's a couple comments I want to read. One by Base Delta Zero. It says, that was fantastic. It's the most polished experience I've had the pleasure to try to date, and I've tried them all. And they hit the ball out of the park. And this person's very enthusiastic, like Emart. It's fucking amazing. And excuse the language, he says, but you'll understand it when you try it. Had anybody else tried the demo?
No, I have not yet, but I've seen the Emart video and it does look incredibly amazing.
Yeah, I'm the same. I just saw the video. I had my Rift for 4 or 5 months or something. I haven't had my dad here. I've been kind of thinking, my dad likes technology, but he's not a very techie guy, and I'm kind of thinking, I've been looking around for the right demo to show him, give him his first VR experience.
Mm-hmm.
I think that might be the one.
Yeah, that's a really good one. Krysania, have you seen this or heard of this? And if you hadn't, you should definitely check it out.
I haven't, but I have tried something similar to it, like because I'm looking at it right now, and it looks beautiful, and it just seems like it'd be a really great way to incorporate, like cinematic and traditional narrative into the VR experience. Um, Definitely right now, like especially having worked in Hollywood and have worked on a few film sets myself and having seen a lot of movies, I know for a fact that like the industry is dying, and I'm thinking, well, everyone's using the internet, everyone's getting involved in these immersive technologies. Why stick with such traditional methods when you can take some of your ideas and all the things that you've learned into this new VR space? Because this is where it's going to go.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. And I'm sure we're hearing about it more and more. Even Fox is, getting into this space, and this space is kind of the space to be for kind of everything, in my opinion. Of course, we're all fanboys.
Yeah.
Um,
But I'm just kind of wondering though how other people might feel about this if people start making, like VR movies, let's say, and we're having these immersive experiences, and like you can't move your character per se, but like you can watch these things happen as they play out. Uh, I wonder, do you guys feel like it would be a little kitschy, kind of like how 3D glasses are in 3D movies, or do you think that it might actually be a really cool experience for a lot of people, or both?
I think they're definitely cool, but I think it's what the 3D TVs or 3D movies aspire to be. Really, is giving you that amazing immersive 3D experience. Um, it's it's uh, it's quite a leap from watching a 3D movie or 3D TV to experiencing true stereoscopic 3D in VR and being in those places rather than observing them through a window.
And there's a lot of trust involved with this type of 3D because things can get very, very close to your face, so close that it's uncomfortable. So if somebody's trying to do a jump scare or maybe stick a drill into your eye or something, they could do that. So you need to really trust who's making this content. That's why I haven't been playing any of the horror games, just because it's a little scary.
Yeah, I agree. I'm not big on the horror thing either. I'm really curious to see, how VR movies or whatever will go. A lot of people are saying, oh, how would they do that? How would cuts work and these sorts of things. But I think they're thinking from a traditional movie perspective. Movies could end up being like, Kite and Lightning demos. They'll be more, a story will play out in front of you, but you have the option of perhaps walking around or progressing to the next part of the story on your own time. They won't be so linear and so on the clock, I
kind of
guess.
rushed. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm just kind of wondering if like when we'll get to that point where we can start putting ourselves in the character's shoes and like recite the words to like old movies that we love so much, kind of like in Ready Player One, how like the main character ends up
Totally.
going into like all sorts of different movies, and like you get points based on like how well you remember the scene and everything like that, and how you like interact with it. So I thought that would be really really a cool idea.
Yeah, I would love to see that sort of genre. It becomes a genre in the Ready Player One future, and they played war games there, and the main character had to act out Matthew Broderick's character, and it was just really cool to see that example. I would like to try to play something like that. That's like completely unique, but we're not quite ready for that. But yeah, I would love that. Other
Yeah, I
thoughts
think
on
personally, I think
cinema?
for now in terms of the cinematic stuff, I think there's still a lot of experimentation that needs to take place in terms of how you can tell stories efficiently and well paced like they do in traditional cinema. And there's just, I don't think we can translate traditional cinema over. I think people need to stop thinking that way and think of just break the rules and try completely different ways of telling story. And Senzo Peso, it's one example of how they take you through an experience. I don't know what the story is, but I certainly can see how you could tell a story along that path and show different elements, like you're going through warp gates, and that could be the thing that progresses you through the story, and you're seeing these things as an observer or a fly on the wall, so to speak, but feeling like you're actually there. Um, there's certainly a lot of experimentation that needs to take place there before you could effectively say we can do true, good, really good storytelling in the traditional sense. Aside from what I actually prefer in terms of games and the games that I like to play, I like, I believe it was, oh, I can't think of his name right now, the guy who created SimCity. He, or was it Peter Molyneux? Anyway, one of the two guys
White,
mentioned that.
something white,
Right.
or right.
Will Wright. Will Wright, his name is, yeah.
Yeah.
And he talked about his GTA character, and he talked about how the most interesting stories are the stories the players create themselves. And I think that is really, really true in VR, is that the experience you're having is creating the story. It's just, you know, you need the right technology and the right elements in that game and the mechanics to allow you to have a degree of dynamics and depth that make that story interesting. You know, if you play a game of Battlefield 4 online, and every time you play that game, the dynamics, even though all the elements are the same, the experience you have every time you play that game, incorporating those elements, is so dynamic, and you could tell a story just from every time you play a session of that game, which is interesting enough. To me, that is more powerful really than sitting and observing a story, even though traditional storytelling is very important, and you know, it always will be. Yeah.
Yeah, and would we be using Machinima sort of thing, or what we're doing here kind of storytelling, like what Kite Lightning's done with, you know, in-engine, or what about this, you know, film shot with cameras that see spherically, and can we do that?
That's the problem,
soon,
right? Is
maybe?
that you can't control what the player is going to observe because they have control over the camera, and that's the problem really. So I don't know how
But you do
can
have
address
control
that.
over the events. Because I experienced, I don't know if you saw it, SVVR, there was this experience that they had where you'd put on Oculus, and I think it was a preview for a game, where you would look down and your body was actually like being put together by these machines, and there was a bunch of stuff happening like in
Yes.
front of you. If you were to look behind you, nothing was there. So it's like, okay, well, why am I going to look there if nothing's happening? So I mean, you can kind of guide, you know, the view based on like how you would create the frame, because people are going to be drawn towards that aesthetically pleasing, you know, thing that's right in front of them. So you know, I think there could be a sort of strategy when it comes to that. I mean, like they're making such beautiful things as it is. Now all we need to do is just figure out how to like
Yeah.
work through that.
All right, so Proton, let's talk a little bit. Tell us a little bit about yourself and how you also got involved in VR.
All right. Yeah. So I was developing a website called nplay.com with a game called Begone. It's like a web version of Counter-Strike. And yeah, it had a pretty big community. It's going pretty good until E3 2012 when Carmack started showing off that prototype that was all duct taped together. And I was just like, what is this? And immediately started going onto the Meant to Be Seen forums, and I wanted to start making something for VR, because when he said it was ready, I mean, you have to listen to him. He's the authority on this kind of stuff. So yeah, that's when I really got into VR. And I know a lot of people in the play community are a little upset that I've sort of not been working full-time on that, only part-time on that. And that's you know, that's unfortunate, because there's some things that I'm just passionate about and I need to do. So this is one of those things.
Excellent. Time Rifters is an interesting concept in which you play alongside ever-increasing past versions of yourself. How did you come up with that idea?
So the first game I tried making in VR was a stealth action game, and one of the features I added to it was a developer commentary system, sort of like you see in Gunpoint. Gunpoint's a 2D game where they put developers around the levels, and you could click on the developer and he would tell you something about it, something about the art design or whatever. So I did something like this where I actually walked around the level, recording my voice and my animations and everything, and I would talk about the level, how it was made, if it was based on some other game that I've seen something of. And when I replayed it, I found it incredibly compelling. I couldn't believe it. And there was sort of, since it was only semi-implemented, we were both able to shoot enemies together. And when that happened, I just thought that it would be crazy if I could do that with some of the YouTubers that I love watching their videos, if I could actually play with them. And So the idea was stuck in my head, but we didn't really experiment with it until the VR Jam came up. And then we thought, let's just try it, see if it's possible to make a game where something like that could happen. And it's just been evolving since then.
Awesome. Love it. Your Let's Replay feature allows player to play along with... Didn't I just read that? Along with recordings of other people. How do you think this sort of tech could be implemented in other games? Could this be the future of NPCs?
Yeah, I could totally see that. So Kenzie and I have been playing a lot of Skyrim lately, and one thing everybody notices is that there's a limited number of voices, and in some ways that's a little bit charming. You kind of recognize the same voice, but in other ways you wish there was a bit more variety, or they had more actors, or they had more expressions if they were able to move their whole upper body somehow, and that is something that we could nowadays. We could record this. You could actually have something like Skyrim where you allow people in the community to create quests, create characters, record them, put them into something like the Steam Workshop, and you could download it. So you would have infinite variety as long as people just keep creating content. And it would be very compelling. It would be very unique. Everywhere you go, you could see something a little different. And maybe even with the workshop, people would be able to buy it. So content creators, people just creating a quest in a game, they could actually potentially make money just by making game content, by making quests in video games. So yeah, there's a lot of potential there, I think.
All right, great. Thanks for sharing all that good stuff with us, Proton. All right, so I want to talk to Krysania a little bit about herself, and if you could introduce and tell us a little more about your history with virtual spaces and whatnot.
Oh yeah, I'm an MFA student at Columbia College Chicago. I'm getting my degree in interdisciplinary art and media, which is basically a really fancy word for I like to do everything. But a lot of the work that I do is trying to create metaverse between physical and digital space. So like I'll take Second Life and I'll project it into a space, and I'll like digitally create that space in Second Life, like the physical space into Second Life. And I try to create this interaction where there's like a feedback loop. So like you'll see, Second Life, and then you'll see the real world or the physical world, and then you'll see Second Life again, like for infinity. And then people can interact with each other either through me as like the bridge to be able to chat with people in world, for people to like speak through my microphone or something like that and talk with them that way, or the other way around where people can like write and chat and then respond. And it's basically like a really fancy schmancy way of putting people in my head and my actual universe, and like trying to create commentary on like the metaverse as a viable way of existence. Because like oftentimes you see people sitting in front of their computers, and like the traditional idea is that most people seem to look at those people like, oh man, they must be so lazy, or they must be just like working on Word documents, and they might be watching a movie or whatever. But there's so much more that happens like through our experiences, when we're involved with these technologies. We're having these like deep, intimate connections with the things that we're working with, and there's a lot more to that than just someone sitting in front of a computer or playing with some kind of video game. So I'm trying to open up that door and like see if people might want to bite onto that a little bit more. And some of the things that I'm trying to get myself into now is to be able to maybe even use high fidelity in the future to basically have myself in the middle of a room with this headset on and project my world and my environment in all directions, where people can walk into a space and like see what I'm experiencing from a first-hand basis. And they can interact with me in the physical world, and then like also even like cue me to look in a certain direction, and even use me as like a sort of controller to change the environment. And it's a way for me to subvert the white cube and to like push the walls down, so to speak, and expand space in the physical world. So that's what I do.
Wow, that's really amazing. Very, very interesting stuff. One more question. What do you think are, and I want to then toss this over to everybody, but what do you think the artistic implications of VR are?
Oh, I think it's a necessity. It's a total necessity.
Yeah.
In one of the panels, they were actually talking about how there's a bit of a crisis in content creation right now because we have the means to create all this stuff, but nobody who really knows how to work, the technical side of things to be able to toss this up on the board. And I think what really needs to happen is there are a lot of people out there who make art, but they're kind of like stagnant in it. They're afraid to like get themselves involved in tech and media. And the fact of the matter is, if like it's nice, you can have painters and you can have whatever, doing that stuff in real life, and that's all nice and well, but you can also bring your art into the digital world and have a whole bunch of people see that too, because we need people to create these spaces. I mean, like, someone had to have created this room that we're sitting in right now, because otherwise what would we be? you know so that's
Absolutely, yeah.
important. It's so important. And like, when you create aesthetically pleasing places, you'll bring people who are just like really excited about the beauty of all of this. Like, in essence, the combination between artists and coders and everybody that goes into putting these things together in a collection, we're all magicians, and we're creating experiences for people that are enriching and delighting and allow for people to uh, have a better life experience, I think.
I could add
Great
something.
answer.
Uh, I had the opportunity around when GDC was on to go up to Seattle and visit Valve and try out Valve's VR technology. And they had this one really cool demo. It wasn't a VR room, it was one of the kits that they use at their desk. I think they recently showed some pictures of it. They had it at the Boston VR event. Anyway, so they had this sculpting demo where you sit at a table and you have a cube spinning in front of you, which is essentially like a piece of clay. And using the Hydra control, actually no, sorry, using the Sony Move controllers they had, you could hold different tools in your hands, and you could sculpt this voxel cube, which was essentially spinning. So it was like a lathe, and you could carve it out, or you could stop it, and you could next to you there were a set of tools where you could use kind of traditional height map editing tools, subtract, add, smooth, and different shaped tools with different shaped tips on them to create different carving surfaces on them. And apparently they told me that they did actually get a really really well-known sculptor to come in and try the tools out and spend some time with it. I'm not sure how he actually found them, but I found that really interesting, both from a technical standpoint and how they were trying to get people, non-technical people, to try VR things out. And the other thing I think I'm really looking forward to is the demo scene getting involved in VR, the traditional demo scene, where they produce, essentially works of art, music, and code to produce really cool presentations. I think once those guys get involved, we'll see some pretty mind-blowing stuff. Because if you've followed any or seen many famous scene demos, there's some really talented people involved in that space.
Very interesting. I think, getting people to be able to use these tools easily is going to be huge, in that we want more creators, but it is a little bit difficult right now. And, what this show is content, and that's definitely been one of my goals. And really, the goal was to get people connected, but this was another way to do that sort of thing. And I, give credit to the Riftmax folks that, they get that they built this great software, but they also do a lot of events like karaoke and this and whatnot. So, yeah, absolutely. Any other thoughts, Proton?
So I guess in terms of art style, over the next probably couple years, I think that instead of going for realism like you're seeing with the modern consoles, it's probably going to be more of an abstract, low polygon kind of look to things, especially because we need such a high frame rate. We need to render the scenes twice, one for each eye. So some of the fancy things like maybe reflections won't make it in. But there's a lot of games that have a really cool style to them, kind of like Windlands. It's a cartoony looking game. It looks pretty cool. And that Lucky's Tale game, I mean, it looks, just from the logo, we can tell it's kind of cartoony, so they're not going for realism, which means they may be able to pull off some sort of low polygon, cool aesthetic look. So that's probably what we're going to see in the short term, just because I guess eventually Oculus does seem to want the OS running on the headset itself. So what kind of power are you going to have there? Probably not, definitely not as much as a desktop. So you want to have something that can run really fast, 90 frames per second, look really good. So there's going to be some neat artistic stuff coming out, probably low polygon.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I think generally, if you can get a really talented artist to come in and put a good artistic direction spin on it that works within the constraints of some performance specification or budget for rendering, yeah, you could see something that looks really, really nice and also runs really, really fast.
The interesting thing is the pixel art that we're seeing nowadays is significantly better than the pixel art that we kind of saw back in the Nintendo generation. With that same sort of limitation, the artists nowadays have learned new techniques that they'd be able to do cooler things. So it's possible that old techniques will come back, but also be a bit evolved.
Interesting. All right, let's open things up to the audience. If anybody has a question, I did see somebody at the microphone a little earlier. Please state your name and your question or comment.
Yeah, this is Nukemarine. Yeah, I had a question about the virtual experiences, the cinematic experiences such as the Sensa Peso, because I did get to try that out and I did enjoy it, but I was experiencing was that I realized my rig or my computer is not good enough to get the full experience. And what I guess what I want to say is, like, how are you going to see Hollywood with the mixture of movies and computers? The best thing Hollywood offers is that they can offer the pre-rendered experience that, for those that don't have the good computers to get the rendered on the fly or real-time rendering. They can get the pre-rendered, which they are masters at for that experience. And what's y'all's opinion on that?
That's interesting. What do you guys think?
I think that actually there is something they could do with the time warping mechanic, because one of the problems with the pre-rendered stuff we've been seeing recently is it's just on a big sphere around you, so you can't actually positionally move yourself. But if they use this, if they're able to record the depth as well and use this sort of time warping thing where you're still able to move around, there would still be a little bit of artifacts, but it could be a good way of doing pre-rendered stuff and getting a great frame rate.
Interesting. Anybody else?
Yeah, well, again, for me, I think it's gonna take a long time before they go, right, we can make movies now in VR, and certainly not until there's a massive audience that can make it viable to even tackle. So the performance problem is something that's going to be around for a little while, at least for the high-end rendering stuff that everyone wants to see the very best rendering stuff that we can do, because that just makes the experience that much more incredible. And I think it's probably going to be a case of the industry being several years behind in terms of rendering performance, in terms of what is an average or medium level specification PC, at least for the high-end stuff. What's the average that everybody's going to be able to actually run practically? So right now, what would be the median for a PC? And it's probably mid to low spec PCs, which are the most dominant. If you were to target that as your performance spec, you would cover the most amount of people. So as we were talking earlier about coming up with a budget or a performance specification for whatever production you're going to do, and then getting your art director to work within that constraint to produce something that looks really, really good, that's how you can hit the most amount of people and ensure that the most amount of people have the best experience.
Well, I don't know.
That's
I
great.
guess in terms of like Hollywood in particular, I think this actually gives them a reason to create VR theaters in general, like to create theater experiences where you have tons of people wearing these headsets that only the theater can provide, because they'll spend like however much money to create this business, and then people don't need to buy these things. They can just go to the theater and watch their VR movies or experiences in that way instead. And that's how we can get people back into that business, because right now no one's really going to the movies anymore because they could just watch it at home. Why do that?
Yeah, that's a really good point. And in fact, the partners that I'm now working with are very interested in doing installations with big motion platforms. We were talking about setting up an installation where a group of people can come and something like laser tag. It's a warehouse that's set up with several rooms that are on motion platforms, and everyone can drive a tank around. And it's a high-end arcade experience that people are willing to pay money for, and you could create a business model around that. And yeah, definitely, that's maybe what the movie industry may go after.
Yeah, I really like that. We've talked about, like, can arcades come back, and maybe some really complex, crazy flight simulators that turn upside down, or all kinds of really cool gear that can immerse and bring more presence and the stuff we can't experience. But I never thought about it in the cinema way, and that people could go to a movie theater to get that really high-end virtual movie. So that's really great. Nuke, what do you think of those answers, or maybe you have another question?
Well, I mean, those answers are great. And, about bringing up, like, hey, make the high-end stuff you can rent or just visit, especially because not everyone's going to be able to afford the stuff at home right now. And that's what I was experiencing with the Sensa Peso. I just don't have the good enough computer to get the full experience that I'm seeing other people having. So it's a great point on that.
Cool. I think we're going to wrap things up then. I guess you guys have plugged things, but let's just go around real quick and plug away, and we'll start with Shop.
Okay, yep, I'm Sean Edwards, better known as Shover here, and you can find Lunar Flight on Steam and at www.shovesoft.com, and if you also want to check out my new project ZVR, just type ZVR Apocalypse into YouTube and you'll find some videos.
Excellent. And how about you, Holotape? You want to point anybody to anything?
If you want to get in touch with me, I'm at Holotape on Twitter. I just want to give another shout out to Team Metatron. They're at metatronvr.com. Also, what else? I guess safariamericano.com. It's a documentary I did the soundtrack for a couple years ago. A couple of my friends took it's not VR related. It's still like a travel documentary, but I think it's a good time. If you're bored,
that's cool.
It's a free movie.
Yeah.
You can watch it on YouTube.
So my name is Yunji Yohaning, and my avatar's name is Krysania, and I have my educational blog, which is the Yunjiverse, so YUNJI verse.tumblr.com, and then you can also find my avatar's blog at cuckoonuts.tumblr.com, which you can find all sorts of stories about, like, the life and times of my avatar and my, I guess, archaeological dig into virtual space.
Following the life of your avatar just sounds really interesting to me. Proton, what do you want to point people to?
All right, so check out timerifters.net. We've put all of our stuff together in one spot, videos, pictures, that type of stuff. There's a link to the blog. We try to do blog updates once every 2 weeks. Sometimes we'll do once a week, and that just keeps us motivated, keeps us moving forward on our progress, and shows people what we're up to. There's also links to our Twitter, Facebook, and all that kind of stuff, so yeah, give that a follow.
All right, folks, with that, that's going to be a wrap, and I'll see you all next time on Virtually Incorrect every Friday night. It's been a pleasure being your host. Thanks to all my guests, the audience members, Riftmax crew, Holotape for all the prep he's helping with, authors, commenters of the stories, and finally to the whole damn VR community. You guys rock. So keep on riding the wonderful, and have a good night.
Woohoo! I can see my house from here.